All right, I'll go ahead and start Visual Studio 2015. And as you can see, I have it on my toolbar. I use it all the time, every day, so it's just real handy to have available. Now by default, you'll see this Start page as you load Visual Studio. This is an HTML page that lets you load one of your most recent projects over here, some quick links for creating new projects or opening projects, including from source control, and then lots of information that comes from the Microsoft Developer Network website for information and downloads. And you can get assistance on getting started with creating applications with Visual Studio. Now what you see here is going to depend on the version of Visual Studio that you have installed, what projects you've had open recently, and the current content that Microsoft pushes to the page, including the news of the day. Now the Start page can take a while to load because it's pulling together so much information, both locally and over the internet from Microsoft. You don't have to wait for it all to load before using Visual Studio, but if you want to save the processing cycles and bandwidth, you can turn it all off. So to do that, you come up here to Tools Options. That'll be a recurring theme. Anytime you need to change something in Visual Studio, this is likely the place to go. And instead of in the environment, come here to Projects and Solutions. I'm sorry, it's in the Environment section and Startup. Okay, got confused about where it was. All right, so as you can see, I have the default set to show Start page. But there's various other options. If you're working on a solution, it's the only solution that you're working on, or for the most part, you can just open the last loaded solution. You can show the Open Projects dialog box, show New Project dialog box if most of the time you're creating new projects. You show the empty environment, or show the Start page. Okay, so I'm going to change this to show empty environment, because for the rest of the courses, I don't want to take the time every time I start Visual Studio to make you sit and watch the Start page load. Okay, so it'll just be an empty environment as though we closed the Start page. All right, click on OK, and now the next time that I start up Visual Studio, the Start page won't show. Okay, so next thing I want to show you is I want to go back here into Options. And now I want to go into Projects and Solutions and the general options here. By the way, if you select the top level node, that's going to show the first child node. So this is the same thing showing the general options. So as you can see, I have a default projects location. This was set when I installed Visual Studio. I installed Visual Studio, and so it's using my user area within Windows. See users Don Kiley, and then drill down into Documents, Visual Studio 2015 and projects. Now you can change that. If you have a default location, generally I keep nothing on the C drive of my own. I have a development folder on usually my D drive, or I might want to put it in my Dropbox folder or wherever is appropriate. Then I probably want to come in here and change this. But one nice thing is that usually Visual Studio, when you go to create a new project, will default to the last location where you saved a project. So this setting isn't absolutely critical, but you may want to go ahead and change it to your general location where you save projects. So that's one thing that you can change before you start a new project. Okay, so let's now finally create the project. I'm going to click on New Project here, but I could also come up here to File and New and Project. Notice I can also create a website, a team project, and an individual file, as well as a project from existing code. But since the Start page is open, I'll just click on New Project. But no matter how I get to this, whether File, New Project, or New Project right here, Visual Studio is going to give me the New Project dialog box. Take a few seconds to initialize, look at all the templates that are available, and there's quite a number that are available in a default installation of Visual Studio. But again, it's going to depend upon some of the settings, the selections that you made when you installed Visual Studio. All right, so I generally work with Visual C#. The last time I opened up a new project, I created some sort of Visual C# application. And as you can see, there's a list of all different kinds of project templates that I can start from here. And they're broken down into different categories. I want a console application, that's listed right there. There's different kinds of Windows application. that I can do, of which a console application is a window application. Here are various kinds of web applications, and so forth. So you can explore all those different options, but I want to select a console application. Okay, then down here, you can give a meaningful name to your application. For this simple demonstration, I'm going to accept the default, Console Application 1, but generally I want to give it a more meaningful name, because this is going to be the name of the top-level namespace within the project as well. So generally, you want to give this a descriptive name that identifies what exactly this is going to be. Now, I also want to change the default location. So I'm going to come over here to C, and I have this Learn Now folder and samples. So I'm going to put it in that location right there. Okay. I also want to create a directory for the solution, although that's not necessary. You could put it directly in the samples folder here. And I could add it to source control if I use Git or GitHub or SourceSafe or whatever kind of source control. And I'll click on OK. And now Visual Studio will whir and click and clank and do all the work to create that console application. It's created a folder on my hard drive at the location that I specified, and then also created a few starting projects for me, including this program.cs file. Okay, and if I go over here to Solution Explorer, this shows the overall structure of the application, and I'm going to pin it open so it stays open for the time being. And you can see all of the things that Visual Studio created for me. So I can drill down here, can see that there's an assemblyinfo.cs and various references. I'll talk more about those, an app.config file, as well as this program.cs file. And I can also select this option here because there could be hidden files. And as you can see, there's two hidden bin and obj files. So these, actually folders. So these folders, when I compile the project, are going to contain all of my compiled code. And there's various folders within there and so forth. I don't need to worry about those for our purposes right now. So I'm going to click that off. But just be aware that Solution Explorer by default doesn't necessarily show all of the artifacts or all of the different pieces of the project. It's going to show all the code files, all the things that you're likely to need to work with. But for some application types, particularly web applications, it might be worthwhile to show all the files. But again, for our purposes here, I want to keep an uncluttered display, so I turn that off. Okay, so as you work with Visual Studio, you'll find that the design window here, this big window to the left, in fact I'll reduce this size just a little bit there, is really your main center of attention. So this is where Visual Studio displays the various designers and code windows, surrounded by the many tools that are available within Visual Studio. Now, to display all these windows, Visual Studio uses a modified version of what used to be called the standard Multiple Document Interface, or MDI layout, which is a tabbed view. So as I open more files here, more designers, they'll appear as tabs up here. There's various toolboxes, and there's various windows that I can dock in various locations. If I want to, I can detach this file from the environment, and if I have multiple monitors or even a higher resolution than I'm recording this in right now, then I can display those and I can move them around and take full use of all the monitor space that I have. Visual Studio 2015 is fully optimized for massive amounts of monitor real estate as well as touch applications. I can't really display its touch features other than just have to kind of. That was a bit of a problem in earlier versions of Visual Studio. Even Visual Studio 2013 didn't fully support touch. So it's nice that Microsoft has fully implemented those features. Okay, so as I mentioned, you can pin and unpin different windows here. I can come here to the Properties window and pin that as well. And now I have this multi-layer of windows there. I can move Properties down a bit. I can also drag this over here and just have this as a floating window. Again, probably only want it to be floating if I have lots of monitor space, and I can put this over to the side someplace. I can drag it back in different locations, and notice that I get all these indicators of what happens if I were to let go of the mouse right now. properties window would become a full window within the designer area. Or I can put it down below, or all the way down below and dock it in different locations, or I can dock it to the side here, or I can also come over here and dock it in various locations. And I'll drop it right here on top of Solution Explorer. And now I have this nice tabbed interface down here below. So I can go between Solution Explorer and Server Explorer and whatever other windows that I have available here. Okay. So that shows another way in which you have a lot of flexibility, a lot of power over the environment. If you like all your windows on the right side, put them all there. On the left side, put them there. At the bottom, top, wherever. If you want all of your windows in the center design area, here in the middle, go for it. Visual Studio, most of the profiles will have a mix of windows in different locations. So there's this toolbox window over here. I can come over here and click on that. It doesn't happen to be any toolboxes items that are available for this type of application. Actually, it's going out and reading the assembly. There aren't any. But for different kinds of applications, there might be icons there. So that's yet another window that I can put anywhere within my environment. So a lot of flexibility. You can customize the environment however is best for your working style.